People talk about happiness all the time, yet we often don't even have a clear idea about what we mean when we're talking about happiness. For example, when we're young, we often equate happiness with pleasure or with sensual enjoyment. And then as we get older, we start equating happiness with things like material security, or with our accomplishments, or perhaps with our particular relationships. So when people talk about happiness, they're talking about this version of everyday or personal happiness. But it's important to realize that all of these aspects of happiness are based, at least in part, on the external circumstances of our lives. So even to the degree to which the externals, including our personal relationships, can in fact make us happier, the fact is the externals can always change. We could lose our job, we could lose our relationships, we could even lose our good health. Eventually, we have to accept that basing our happiness on externals is, in a way, like building a foundation on sand. But there's another kind of happiness that goes beyond personal happiness, one that's not based on ephemeral or external conditions. This is the deeper, more genuine happiness of true contentment, of being fundamentally okay with our life as it is, no longer attached to our life being any particular way. Genuine happiness is not exhilaration. It's not about being cheerful all the time. These things can certainly be included, but genuine happiness includes the ability to experience equanimity even when our outer life is not going well. So how can we experience this deeper type of happiness? The truth is, there are many things that we could do to cultivate it. And how specifically to do this is the subject of my new book, Beyond Happiness, the Zen Way to True Contentment. Sometimes it's hard to believe that contentment is even possible, and that's because we've gotten so good at what we practice, which is doing all the things that perpetuate our unhappiness: striving, worrying, struggling. But we can practice something different, namely living in a more genuine way. The wonderful thing is, when we finally stop living from fear and living from pretense, trying to win, trying to hide, trying to please, it's like letting go of a very heavy burden that we've been carrying around our whole lives. And the result is a lightness of being that is the essence of true contentment. I'd like to talk a little bit about the subject of gratitude and how it relates to the idea of genuine happiness. Gratitude is actually one of the essential aspects of being truly happy. Because think about it, if we're not grateful for what we have, we'll always want life to be different from what it is, which is a demand that will surely guarantee our unhappiness. There's an interesting Tibetan slogan that says, "Be grateful to everyone." But what is this asking of us? Because it clearly sounds unrealistic, if not actually impossible. For example, are we supposed to be grateful for the roommate who doesn't clean the sink? Or are we supposed to be grateful for someone who criticizes us? And the answer is, of course we are. Because from the point of view of spiritual practice, whenever we're pushed to the edge of where we're stuck, that's the exact place where our deepest learning can take place. So take the example of the roommate who doesn't clean the sink. Why should we be grateful? Because that's pushing us to exactly where we're stuck, in our anger, in our opinions about how things are supposed to be, in our self-righteousness. How about the person who criticizes us? Why should we be grateful? Because again, that's pushing us to work with, to at least recognize our own anger and fear. The anger and fear that we might otherwise ignore. And the anger and fear which of course lies at the root of our unhappiness. Though gratitude, I think we could all agree, is an invaluable property, trying to make it into a goal is rarely helpful. When we make gratitude into an ideal to be achieved or a goal, then we're just setting up some picture of how we're supposed to be in order to help us attain happiness. But striving after happiness doesn't bring happiness. It only perpetuates the craving mind. And it also blocks any sense of real appreciation or gratitude. It is, however, possible to cultivate gratitude without making it into an ideal. So I want to mention a particular practice that I found very helpful. And I describe this practice in my new book, Beyond Happiness, the Zen Way to True Contentment. You actually might want to even try this practice. So periodically, throughout the whole day, you would just every once in a while pause, and you would say thank you, just for the duration of 3 full breaths. And you would say thank you to everything that comes your way, no matter what. So the instructions are actually quite simple. And so again, at various points throughout the day, you first would pause, ceasing activity just for the duration of 3 breaths. Second, you would breathe, becoming aware of the breath, feeling its texture. And third, you would say thank you, opening to whatever is present in the moment. Now, the really interesting thing that this practice shows us is how many things we're not thankful for. But the truth is, every time something irritates us or scares us or displeases us in some way, we have the opportunity to see where we're placing limitations on thankfulness. For example, when our expectations aren't met and we experience disappointment, saying thank you allows us to see those expectations more clearly, the very expectations out of which our disappointment arose. And as we see this whole dynamic clearly, then it no longer dictates how we feel. It loses its grip over us. As we do this day-long practice of saying thank you, over time it begins to call forth gratitude from our inner fabric. And as we work with recognizing, seeing all the things that block genuine gratitude, it begins to come forth naturally. We don't have to make an effort to do it. Eventually, being present for these 3 breaths of gratitude, when we do this as a practice, it begins to feel like a refreshing drink of reality. And we also realize that it's possible to feel inwardly grateful and also genuinely happy, even when our outer life is not going well.